Gail from Santa Cruz, California. Welcome to The Narrow Path. Thanks for calling.
Hi. My husband and I have recently been bringing a friend to church, and we bought him a Bible for Christmas. And my husband suggested that he start reading Genesis to understand God and creation. And I started thinking this morning, when I myself am again reading Genesis, I started thinking he might ask about dinosaurs, and I don't know what to tell him.
Well, the Bible, I think, mentions dinosaurs. It doesn't use that term because nobody used that term until the 1800s. The term dinosaur, which means terrible lizard, was a coined term in the 1800s, and the Bible, of course, was translated before that. The Bible does, in Genesis chapter 1, refer to God making all the creatures in the sea and all the creatures on the land. In verse 20 of Genesis 1, it says, God said, let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures. Let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament and the heavens. So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the waters abounded, and so forth, and also the things that flew. In verse 24, God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after its kind, cattle and creeping things, the beast of its earth, according to its kind. And it was so. So all the creatures that fly or are in the sea or on earth, it mentions them being created by God. Now, dinosaurs were just animals. I mean, they weren't some special thing from outer space or something. They were just animals. There were dinosaurs in the sea. There were dinosaurs that flew, and there were dinosaurs that were on land. And by the way, there's still some pretty big reptiles around in some parts of the world today. We don't call them dinosaurs because we reserve that term usually for these extinct, huge creatures, but there are still some very, very large reptiles around and large animals. But the size of them, I think, is what makes us think of them as different and needing some different time to be. Now, of course, scientists of an evolutionary sort would tell us that dinosaurs became extinct 70 million years ago, and therefore they wouldn't fit into the time frame of Genesis 1 through 6. But the idea that dinosaurs died off 70 million years ago is not necessarily something that's been proven. It's just a common opinion of evolutionary thinkers. They think the earth is billions of years old, and they think that certain creatures arose billions of years ago, and some of them became extinct hundreds of millions of years ago. And this is how they think, but it's not something that's proven. I mean, they have found soft tissue in dinosaur bones recently. This has really challenged the idea that dinosaurs died off 70 million years ago. The tissue in the bones is still soft and moist. That wouldn't be so if it was tens of millions of years old. There's been reports, I can't verify any of them, but there's been a lot of reports throughout history of people seeing what would appear to be dinosaurs. I mean, they didn't call them that because the word dinosaur wasn't available to them yet, but dragons, they exist in the historical folklore, at least, of nations all over the world. And there's no reason necessarily to believe that they were all made up. I mean, why should we assume that? It seems to me that Job was familiar with dinosaurs because God speaks to him about it. In Job chapter 40, verses 15 through 24, there's a creature described there called Behemoth. And in chapter 41 of Job, there's a creature called Leviathan, who are apparently both reptilian giant creatures, and with scales and teeth and terrifying to humans and things like that. It even says that you can't spear them or shoot them with arrows because arrows against their scales are like straw. We don't know of any reptiles today about which that could be said. There's some huge, for example, crocodiles get almost 30 feet long. That's pretty huge, but you can still pierce them with an arrow. They don't deflect spears and arrows. So there's something much bigger that's being described there. And Job knew about it. Actually, God is the one speaking to Job in these passages, but God is assuming that Job is familiar with them. And what's more, they're just at the end of a list of animals that God talks to. God talks to him about wild horses and about eagles and about different animals that Job was familiar with. And then he mentions Behemoth and Leviathan as if they are also creatures that he was equally familiar with. To my mind, the idea that dinosaurs all died off 70 million years ago is simply a theory that doesn't have any proof at all. And there's an awful lot of evidence from cultures that would suggest that dinosaurs were known by people, that some people had seen dinosaurs. There are temples in India in the jungles that they found, very ancient temples that have engravings of animals of all kinds, including Stegosaurus, on their pillars. There's a lot of reasons to believe dinosaurs didn't all die off 70 million years ago, and that they have coexisted alongside man at certain times.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll look those up. That
All
helps.
right, Gail. Good talking to you.